I had been married to Ethan for 3 years, and we were considered a model couple by everyone around us. But I knew that this marriage was something I had forced upon him. I loved him for 7 years. He never loved me, his heart belonged to another. Even when I was gravely ill and on my deathbed, he never showed up. My heart finally gave up. In my next life, I asked for a divorce. He cried and begged me, saying he regretted everything. Chapter 1. I had died once. Not just my body, but my heart as well. I chased Ethan for 7 years and was married to him for 3. 10 years of my life, all wasted on a love that was never reciprocated. Everyone said Ethan and I were a match made in heaven. I thought so too. He was outwardly gentle but never truly cared for me. He would fulfill my requests but never took the initiative to be kind. His actions were impeccable, but there was no warmth. I thought he was just a cold person. Until his true love, Anna, returned from abroad. She was flamboyant and stunning, the complete opposite of my tranquil demeanor. Only then did I realize he could be so passionate, so genuine, so eager. When I wanted to share my pregnancy news with him, he was by the river with Anna. When I lay in the hospital bed, begging him not to leave, he rushed out because Anna called. In my final moments, staring at my phone that was perpetually in use, I threw it into the water. I didn't want to cry anymore, my tears had dried up. Countless disappointments and sorrows had woven a tight net around me. In this life, my emotions were all because of this man, but he never loved me. I asked him if there was even a moment, just a second, when he had genuine feelings for me. His silence answered everything. It turned out that those 10 years were just a one-woman show. I was fooling myself. My heartbeat stopped. So did my love. Chapter 2. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital room, holding 2 medical reports and a diagnosis. Heaven played a cruel joke on me. 1 month into my pregnancy, I was diagnosed with cancer. Jenny, you're finally awake. Tears fell on my shoulder, and I felt a warm embrace. Sister? I looked at the familiar, gentle face in front of me and the diagnosis, feeling dazed. I had been reborn 3 months back in time. My sister stroked my head, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe that her young sister had so little time left. I hugged her and cried in her arms. But it wasn't because I feared death. It was gratitude to the heavens for giving me a chance to live for myself. Even if it was just 3 months. It was a blessing. Returning from the hospital to that cold home, Ethan wasn't there. Of course, he wasn't. If I remembered correctly, he should be flying a kite by the river with Anna. I never thought that the man who never smiled in front of me would do something so out of character. Is that the power of true love? It only made me feel like more of a joke. Chapter 3. I picked up the phone and dialed. No answer. I dialed again. On the 3rd attempt, I finally heard his familiar voice. Jenny? I'm in a meeting. We'll talk when I get home. Ethan's voice was cold as usual. The old me was kept in the dark. Now I knew that every lie was because he was with Anna. I tightened my grip on the phone, my tone calm. Come home now. I have something important to tell you. There was a moment of silence. Don't be unreasonable. I'll come home when I'm done. Don't wait up for dinner. Beep, the call ended. In the last second before the call was cut off, I heard a woman's laughter. Ethan, where are we going later? I laughed. In my previous life, I was blind, fooling myself that he was busy, that he had reasons. Now, I just wanted to laugh. I decisively found our marriage certificate and started packing my things. I took off the white cotton linen blouse I always wore and changed into a black, glamorous dress. I did my makeup, the most beautiful and intense makeup I could. Before marriage, I was quiet but loved music and rock. I often wore heavy makeup to music festivals. After marriage, to be the perfect wife for Ethan, I gave up my career and hobbies, wore simple clothes, and played the obedient wife. But today was different. I was done with this act. I didn't want to play house anymore. I wanted my freedom back. Chapter 4. I didn't have much, just a few clothes, some daily necessities, all fitting into one suitcase. I printed 2 copies of the divorce agreement and placed them on the coffee table. Just then, the door opened. Ethan walked in. He saw me, his face darkened, and he naturally began to scold me. "What are you doing dressed like that? I told you I was busy. Change your clothes, you don't look like a wife at all." I sneered, realizing he thought I was just throwing a tantrum. I looked at him and walked closer. He frowned and stepped back. "Jenny, what are you doing?" He smelled of women's perfume, and there was a lipstick mark on his neck. I laughed out loud. Ethan looked at me as if I were crazy, his tone displeased. "Jenny, what's wrong with you?" I looked at the man I had loved for so many years, his disdain clear in his annoyed expression, over and over, so obvious, yet the old me had been blind. I laughed at my own foolishness. I heard my own voice, calm and steady. "Ethan, let's get a divorce." Chapter 5. After a brief silence. "What did you say?" Ethan's eyes narrowed, as if he couldn't believe someone who had always been obedient to him would say such a thing. His face turned cold in an instant. "You were the one who insisted on getting married, and now you want a divorce. What do you want?" I laughed. "Yes, I insisted on marrying you, so I deserve this. Now I've seen the light. I don't want to cling to you anymore. It's better to make room for Anna, right?" He looked flustered, his eyes avoiding mine. "We're just colleagues, nothing more." Just then, the doorbell rang. Ethan didn't move. I went to open the door. Anna stood there, looking stunned before putting on a flawless smile. She smiled warmly. "Hello, I'm Ethan's colleague. He left something at my place." I saw it was Ethan's favorite brooch. I looked up at her, seeing the subtle challenge and comparison in her eyes. I smiled at her, dragging my suitcase out. "I'm leaving. He's inside, you can talk." Anna looked surprised but said nothing. I turned to the elevator, seeing Anna enter the room while Ethan didn't come after me. My last bit of hope finally disappeared. I took out my phone and sent a message. "Sign the divorce papers and contact me. We'll meet at the registry office." Ethan didn't reply. The sun outside was bright, reminding me of 3 years ago when I walked in here with excitement. Now, I would walk out with dignity. I dragged my suitcase, trying to recapture my younger self. But then a sharp pain hit me, and I fell to the ground. Blood started to flow down my legs. A passerby took me to the hospital. Lying in the hospital, the smell of disinfectant surrounded me. This time Ethan came. His shirt was wrinkled, and he looked like he had rushed out after getting the call. He sat by my bed. The first thing he did was question me. "Why didn't you tell me?" Hearing his accusatory tone, I started to laugh, the pain in my abdomen intensifying. Ethan looked at me in disbelief. I must have seemed like a madwoman. I stopped laughing, my tone cold. "When does your phone ever connect? You're either in a meeting or on a date. How could I dare disturb you?" He was stunned, but not out of guilt or reflection. It was disbelief that the once obedient me would speak so sharply, and anger at being challenged by someone who used to flatter him. His face darkened, and he subconsciously stood up to leave. But with the eyes of the people around and my condition as a patient, he paused and sat down again. "Stop this, okay? Jenny, nothing happened between Anna and me. You're overreacting. I'll explain when we get home." Chapter 6. Overreacting? I didn't want to hear his excuses anymore. If the hospital hadn't contacted my legal spouse, I wouldn't have told him anything. The old me would have felt wronged and cried immediately in the face of his questioning. But now, I felt a deep exhaustion. I closed my eyes and stopped speaking. Ethan noticed my change. He was silent for a moment before reaching out to hold my hand. It was the first time he had held my hand. He awkwardly tried to comfort me. "Jenny, don't worry. We'll have another child." Strange. My tears had dried up. Why did my nose still sting? Yes, he cared about the child, the business, but not me. I felt the warmth from his hand and the unclear emotions in his eyes. Just as I was about to speak, his phone rang suddenly. He looked at me, then at the phone. He still went out to answer it. I heard his voice faintly outside the door. "I'm at the hospital." "What? Where are you?" "Don't be scared, okay? I'll be right there." He returned with an apologetic look. "Sorry, Jenny. There's an emergency at work. I hired a nurse for you. She'll take care of you." My earlier sadness turned into numbness. This wasn't the first time, nor would it be the last. I was used to him leaving me. I didn't matter at all, did I? So why pretend, why lie? Isn't it disgusting? Looking at his feigned concern, I felt nauseous. I vomited. But I hadn't eaten anything, I vomited blood. My head spun, and I tried to find a tissue but fell off the bed. Maybe I looked too frightening as Ethan's steps halted. He hurriedly called for doctors and nurses, rushing to hold me. My head was spinning, the extreme physical pain making it hard to push away the man who disgusted me. Sweat covered his face as he held me. "Jenny, Jenny! Can you hear me? Jenny!" I laughed self-deprecatingly as I lost consciousness. "Ethan, meeting you was the worst luck of my life." Chapter 7. I was pushed into the operating room in a daze. I lay there for over 10 hours. When I woke, I saw my sister. She had cried herself into a mess, her face covered in tear stains. I reached out to comfort her, touching her arm. She hurriedly wiped her tears. I sat up and hugged her. "Sister, it was my fault. I didn't listen to you and insisted on marrying someone who didn't love me." She started sobbing again. Our parents had died early, we had grown up relying on each other. We were very close. When I wanted to get married, she tried to dissuade me, but I was blinded by love and insisted on a relationship that wasn't mine. How foolish I was. I stroked my sister's swollen eyes. "I'll divorce him and live with you, okay? You won't mind having a sick sister, right?" She playfully hit me. "Silly girl, what nonsense. How could I mind?" I smiled at her, wiping away her tears. Indeed, spending the last phase of life with a loving family was the way to go. Ethan arrived a few hours after I woke up, carrying flowers and supplements. He still thought it was just complications from the miscarriage. Until the doctor informed him of my dire condition, he stood there, looking grim. My sister ignored him, and I didn't want to speak to him either. But he stayed in the room, fumbling with an apple, constantly apologizing. I never imagined the proud Ethan would bow his head. "I'm sorry, Jenny. I'm a bastard. Please forgive me." He handed me the apple poorly peeled. But he still smelled of that perfume. I didn't take it, I just felt disgusted. I turned my back to him, my tone flat. "Ethan, besides signing the divorce papers and going to the registry, don't come to see me again." "Jenny, don't say anything meaningless. I'm done listening. Leave." After a brief silence, Ethan left. As he did, he said, "I won't divorce you. No matter what, you're my wife." I sneered. It started raining outside. I thought I should listen to music, learn to paint, travel with my sister, and do everything I wanted to do. As for the marriage, since I was dying, it didn't matter whether we divorced or not. It didn't matter anymore. Nothing about Ethan matters anymore. Chapter 8. After insisting on being discharged, the hospital finally let me go, seeing that my condition had stabilized somewhat. I walked home with my sister, chatting about our past and the happy moments of our childhood. For the first time in 10 years, I felt at peace. No more anxiety, no more fear, no more dreading a cold face or the sound of his phone ringing. I used to be a bright girl, praised by many as a little sunshine. But back then, to marry Ethan, I gave up so much. Naturally, I didn't go abroad, and my light dimmed after entering the household, often criticized by Ethan. He said my cooking was bad, so I learned to cook diligently. He said I wasn't gentle enough, so I stopped opposing his opinions. I wasn't myself anymore. Thank goodness, I had another chance. I picked up the piano, my old love. My dream was to be a pianist, and I even received an offer to study abroad. My sister found me a piano room at a music school, allowing me to practice after the students finished their classes. One day, a man stood at the door, listening to my playing. "Your playing is beautiful. What piece is this?" "Amazing Grace," I replied. "You play wonderfully," he said, clapping. From then on, he was there every day I went to practice. He was my first audience in a long time. He said his name was Chris. Sometimes we chatted, mostly about music. From Chopin to Mozart, Debussy to Beethoven. When we were inspired, he would play the violin to accompany me. We grew closer. Many things can be felt without being said. But I knew I couldn't do that. I had only a few months left and couldn't waste his time. One night, we almost kissed. I ran away. I never went back to the piano room. That same night, Ethan appeared at my door again. He was soaked from the rain, standing still. I didn't want to deal with him, but my sister said he had been there for 3 hours, and if I left him, something might happen. So, I beckoned to him. He hesitated, his face lit with joy. I was taken aback, feeling a mix of emotions. It reminded me of the old me, waiting foolishly for him, lighting up at the sight of him. I softened, giving him a towel. After a moment of silence, he spoke first. "Jenny, I was wrong. I didn't cherish you." He hung his head, his voice hoarse. The old me might have softened. But the new me wasn't easily fooled. I looked at him amused. "What about Anna? Isn't she worth cherishing?" His body tensed at my words. His reaction told me they hadn't cut ties, contradicting his claims. Anna just returned. She doesn't know many people here, so I spent more time with her. I realized I had never truly seen Ethan. I stepped closer, looking into his eyes. "You're doing a great job. When I waited at home, you were with her. When I lost our baby, you went to her. When I got sick, you went to her. You lied so much, just to be with her. What about me, Ethan? What am I to you?" Ethan opened his mouth but fell silent. "I'm sorry?" Years of restraint and grace finally broke free, an unexplainable anger rising within me. "Sorry? Just a word for my 10 years. I slapped him. He sat there stunned. "Get out," I yelled, furious. Then his phone rang. He took it out and I grabbed it. Anna's voice came through. "Ethan, how did the talk go? Without Jenny's shares, we can't secure the board vote." I hung up, laughing bitterly. "It's not what you think, Jenny." Ethan sprang up, frantic, his face pale. I thought of a saying. "A foolish heart suffers for 18 years. This was the price of a foolish heart. Chapter 9. I sat down, pouring myself a glass of water. "So that's it, Ethan. I wondered why you'd come to apologize. It was for those shares. Your father transferred them to me when we married. If you sign the divorce papers, I'll return the shares." Ethan's lips moved, looking embarrassed. "Those shares are important to me, Jenny. Then sign. I have extra copies of the divorce agreement. Can't we start over? You have only a few months left. Let me be with you. I can cook for you, take you to see the world. We still have a chance." He became emotional, tears streaming down his face. For the first time, he cried in front of me. Human joy and sorrow are different. To me, these were crocodile tears. I looked at Ethan like a stranger. I threw a divorce agreement and a pen at him. "Sign it." Chapter 10. The next time I saw Ethan was at the company. I brought the share transfer agreement. Unsurprisingly, Anna was there. She greeted me. "Jenny, long time no see." I walked past her. Her face turned awkward. I heard whispers around us. That Anna, a homewrecker, always seducing men and even hooked up with Ethan. What else would you expect? Did you hear Ethan is divorcing because of her? I ignored them, walking ahead. But I saw a familiar face in the boardroom. Chris. He looked surprised too, but only for a moment. He smiled at me. I smiled back. Ethan walked over. Mr. Chen, this is Jenny. She's here to transfer shares. With her shares, we can secure the vote. Chris looked at us with interest. He heard the gossip. So this is Ethan's wife? She's beautiful. And the one outside. He glanced at Anna. Ethan's face stiffened. We're divorced. I said. We have no relationship. Mr. Chen, please don't say such things. Chris came closer, boldly asking. In that case, can I pursue you? Ethan's face darkened and everyone outside was stunned. I was shocked, looking at Chris. But his eyes were sincere, not joking. I didn't know what to say, avoiding his gaze. Let's sign the share transfer agreement. We completed the signing in an awkward silence. Chris was the only one not awkward, his eyes following me. I left in a hurry. But I ran into Anna downstairs. She glared at me. I didn't know you were so good at seducing men, Jenny. I frowned, then laughed. I wouldn't dare. I'm just honest. Unlike you, lurking in the shadows. You! Anna was furious, raising her hand to hit me. I dodged, leaning against someone. It was Chris. Ethan came down, glaring at Anna. She reluctantly dropped her aggressive stance. Mr. Chen, no need to see me off. He looked at me, complex emotions in his eyes, but said nothing. Chris nodded, protectively guiding me to his car. Chapter 11. In the car. So, did you run away that night because of him? Chris watched Ethan's retreating figure, asking as we sat in the car. I shook my head. No, not him. He's not worth it. Chris leaned closer, very near. I instinctively recoiled, meeting his gaze. He was more charming than Ethan, with a touch of lazy indifference. He buckled my seatbelt but didn't move back, looking down at me. What I said earlier was true. Will you consider me? I heard my heartbeat quicken. But why? Why did I only have a few months left? I couldn't give him an answer. I turned away, not wanting him to see the tears in my eyes. He sighed, saying nothing more. We drove in silence. He dropped me off at home. Your piano playing is beautiful. I can see you love it. Come back to the piano room sometime. I have a gift for you. He left after saying that. Chapter 12. I stayed home, listening to music. The next day, I practiced piano in the air. On the third day, I followed my heart and went out. But at the door, I saw someone I didn't want to see. Ethan sat on the flower bed, looking like he'd been there a while. He saw me and came over, handing me a box of pastries. Jenny, these are your favorite osmanthus cakes. I queued for a long time to get them. Try them. He watched my face, his eyes hopeful, his expression cautious, unlike anything I'd ever seen. So much like the old me. I suppressed my sadness, calmly taking the pastries. I'll accept these. But Ethan, don't come to see me again. We're over. I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm. Why? Why are you so heartless now? Is it because of Chris? He was suddenly angry, gripping me tightly. I struggled, kicking him, shouting instinctively. Ethan, what's wrong with you? You cheated, ignored me for 10 years. What's the matter? Now that I've moved on, you want me back? Are you a masochist? Ethan suddenly cried. He sat on the ground, looking up at me, tears falling. I'm sorry, Jenny, I regret it. I really regret it, please, give me another chance. I looked down at him, this man I had loved for 10 years, now filled with regret. I reached out, helping him up, brushing off his clothes. My tone was calm. Ethan, loving you for 10 years has exhausted me. Every cold act, every hurt left a mark. There's no going back. I don't want you anymore. I smiled gently. Besides, my time is limited. I want to live for myself. Chapter 13. After sending Ethan away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My words were for him and for myself. I thought of Chris and my piano dream. Why not give myself another chance? I wanted my dreams. Even if I burned out like a moth to a flame, it would be worth it. I wanted love. If I gave it my all, even if it lasted only 3 months, so what? Fate brought us together, I'd cherish it. When it ended, I wouldn't regret anything. Like the rain, it would eventually clear. I rushed to the piano room, finding a familiar figure. I ran to him, hugging him tightly. Chris seemed surprised by my boldness, but his eyes were full of joy. He had been waiting for me. I smiled at him, leaning in to kiss him. We both heard each other's heartbeats. Chris gave me a brand new piano. A piano just for me. As a child, I always wanted my own piano, but we couldn't afford it. Later, I had the money, but I gave up my piano dream for Ethan and never considered buying one. I never expected to have my own piano now. Chapter 14. I was ecstatic, dragging Chris and my sister to listen to me play day and night. In my last days, sharing my music with the people I loved was the happiest thing. But there were some hiccups. One night, a call woke me. It was Anna crying. She sounded drunk, rambling incoherently. Jenny, why do you have everything? I knew Ethan first, but you married him. Now you're divorced, and he still thinks about you, refusing to see me. Why? You have your sister Ethan and Chris. You have so much love. Why do I have nothing? Why are you so lucky? I'm not satisfied, I'm not satisfied. She cried, seemingly passing out, and the call ended. I didn't care about her words. I knew I wasn't lucky. I was just cherishing and loving what I had. I continued to spend my days happily with my sister and Chris. Sometimes I greedily wished it could last forever. But it didn't last long. My illness worsened. One day, I started coughing blood, staining my piano. Chris and my sister looked at me in panic, their voices surrounding me. I wanted to comfort them. But I couldn't speak. By the time I reached the hospital, I had fallen into a coma. I only remembered my sister and Chris holding my hands, their warmth comforting me. It was the most gentle, warm feeling in the world. I thought in my haze. How wonderful to have this chance. Even if I died now, I had no regrets. I closed my eyes, falling into a long dream. Chris Epilogue. From the moment I saw her, I was moved. The soft sunlight shining on her delicate, flying fingers. The music flowing from her fingertips was as captivating as she was. Ah, Ethan was truly blind. But luckily, she was mine now. She must be an angel. So lovely, with dimples when she smiled. Always smelling of osmanthus cakes. I didn't want to see her cry. I knew she had little time left. Don't cry. It's okay. These scores, these melodies, these moments. I'll remember them forever. You'll always be with me in my memories. I won't be lonely. I'm honored to have caught your little tale in your final moments. Angel, I hope you'll come to me early in the next life. Don't make me wait too long.